Passage B starts by telling us about classical Roman law, so that should be no surprise. We ran into a bunch of answer choices, how clued us in. But anyway, so classical Roman law had no special category for blackmail. Why? Right? Because it wasn't necessary. What? Why? Did Romans not know how to blackmail people? Or what, were they just really nice about this? Well, let's see. Roman jurists began their evaluation of specific categories of actions by considering whether the action caused harm, not by considering the legality or illegality of the action itself. Oh, interesting. This is quite a different way of, there are lots of actions that we think cause harm, yet for many reasons we don't want to make it illegal, like free speech, for example. Plenty of speech you can easily say causes harm, but that's no grounds to make it illegal because, well, free speech is important, or more important, in fact. So here they're saying that's not how the Romans thought about this at all. They didn't start by considering action, like, oh, is it legal or is it illegal? No, the first question they asked, okay, you did an action. Was the action harmful or was it not? So that's super weird. I mean, to me, that's like, it's super weird, but I'm sure it's not to them. But anyway, so here, this very short paragraph, I'm just going to write harm because it's very important. It's the first thing you consider. And their assumption, true enough it seems, was that a victim of blackmail would be harmed if shameful but private information were revealed to the world. Sure, yeah. Right, so now it's like, oh, those Romans weren't so nice. It's not like they didn't figure out how to blackmail people. It's just they didn't need laws to specifically ban blackmail, to say blackmail is illegal, outlaw blackmail, because the way they were thinking about what is legal or not is by appealing to this notion of harm. And of course, blackmail harms people. So if the shame would cause harm to the person's status or reputation, then prima facie the threatened act of revelation was unlawful. So there's this presumption of illegality. The burden of proof shifted to the possessor of the information, the potential blackmailer, the party who had or threatened to reveal the shameful facts. Had to show positive cause for the privilege of revealing that information. So now if you're the blackmailer, what you're doing is not legal, not because you're like misusing the Roman state's power or anything. It's because you're threatening to harm someone's reputation, someone's status. And that's just presumptively unlawful, right? Prima facie is just unlawful. So it's like on you to show why there's such a good reason for you to reveal that information. And presumably, you're like, I'm broke, I need money. That's not good enough. Okay, so here, I think I'm just going to write harm implies illegal. Okay, and that's the principle. Principle is you look at action to see if it causes harm. And here, okay, so let's zero in onto blackmail. Well, blackmail presumably causes harm. So if it causes harm, it's just illegal. It's on you to show the person who either wants to reveal the information or did reveal the information. It's on you to show why there's positive case for it. And can you do that successfully? Well, let's look at the last paragraph. In short, assertion of truth of the shameful fact being revealed is not in itself sufficient to constitute privilege. So you cannot just say, oh, but what I'm saying is true. My neighbor really did bury a body in the yard. That's not enough. Okay, truth is actually not enough. Granted, truth is not irrelevant. Okay, well, that's nice to know. Right, truth is relevant. False disclosure is granted even less protection than true ones. Okay, so at least truth gives you a little bit of protection. Okay, but even if it were true, the revelation of shameful information was protected only if the revelation had been made for a legitimate purpose and dealt with a matter that the public authorities had an interest in having revealed. Okay, so clearly the blackmail is illegal now, right? You see that. I mean, it's prima facie illegal, and then you run the test of like, oh, but maybe do you fall into this exception, right? You see here they have sort of like a three-pronged test for an exception. One is you got to make sure it's true. Two is you got to make sure that they say only if it had been legitimate purpose. And blackmail clearly fails this one. How can that be illegitimate? Right. And then three is that it's dealing with a matter that public authorities had an interest in having revealed. Okay, so if you meet all three categories, it's true, you're doing it for a legitimate reason, and three, the public authorities had an interest in being revealed, well, then maybe you can overcome this presumption of illegality. Maybe you've shown a positive cause for getting the privilege of revealing that information. Maybe. I don't know. Right, so last sentence just reiterates that just because something was shameful and true doesn't mean you get to reveal it. Okay, so this passage is pretty straightforward, just really all about classical Roman law and how blackmail works there. First, we start by learning that there's no such thing as just blackmail being illegal. Why? Because Romans look at harm, whether something causes harm. And if you start with blackmail, well, clearly blackmail causes harm, shame, reputation, that's harm. So therefore, it's presumptively illegal. Now, if you want to claim the privilege of revealing, it's like, oh, but I'm protected, I'm privileged to reveal this information. Well, maybe you can do it. The odds are not in your favor. The burden is on you to actually do it, right? So you can maybe appeal to this exception. This 3, it's got to be true, it's got to be this, and it's got to be that. Okay, let's return to the questions. Returning now to question 14, we're talking about the central topic of passage B, and we already liked C better than any of the others. And C says how blackmail has been handled in a given legal system is great because that's about the classical Roman law. And this one, why no good? Yeah, whatever. Returning now to question 16, now we can answer the question most strongly supported by the information given in the passages. So maybe it comes just from A, maybe it comes just from B, maybe it comes from both A and B. Let's take a look at the answers. In Roman law, there's no blackmail paradox because free speech protections comparable to those in Canada and U.S. common law, not an issue. Yeah, that's really good. That's really good because it's true this is why there is no blackmail paradox in Roman law, because they don't care about free speech. Free speech. What are you, enlightened? So definitely good for Roman law. And of course, that's precisely what gave rise to the paradox under U.S. and Canadian law. It's because free speech, you have free speech protections to make revelations. Right? So A is a really good answer choice. In fact, it's the right answer choice. B says, blackmail was more widely practiced in Roman. Really, was it more widely? Like, were the Romans more into blackmailing than us modern people? I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe no. There's just no information in either passage that suggests in which, whether in Canada and U.S. blackmail was practiced more, or whether in Roman times blackmail was practiced more. C says, in general, U.S., Canada grant more freedoms than... Okay, now look, this is probably true just because, it probably wasn't that great to live under the Roman Empire, but you don't know that from the passage. Okay, the passage was really a narrow, focused passage. Passage B was all about, blackmail in Roman times, and passage A mostly was about blackmail in Canadian and U.S. legal regimes, and made like some mention of other things like the free speech. But that's way too narrow. We don't have a complete picture of the classical Roman legal regime, nor do we have a complete picture of the American common law regime. In order to support an answer choice that says something in general about these two regimes. Okay, so it's just unsupportable, even though I would bet money that it's true, right? That C is true. But that doesn't matter, right? It's not from the information in the passage. D says the best justification for the illegality of blackmail and U.S. And common is damage blackmail can cause. This is just a mishmash. What are you talking about? Passage A, the only justification for the illegality of blackmail offered in passage A was our author's justification, which is that you're misusing a third party's leverage to your own benefit. So yeah, this is nonsense. And E says, unlike Roman law, U.S. and Canadian common law do not recognize the interest of public authorities in having certain types of information. No, this is false. I mean, okay, fine. Roman law does recognize, but so does U.S. and Canadian and U.S. common law. Otherwise, what are you blackmailing with, right? If there's no recognition of the interest of the prosecutor's office in having, criminal behavior revealed, then how does blackmail, like all blackmailers will be out of a job, right? So no good. Returning now to question 17, let's first look at the question stem. Which one of the following is a statement? And we're going to omit all this stuff because we already read it for the first half. Now we need to deal with the second half. Is a statement that would not have been true of blackmail in the Roman legal context. In other words, we're looking for something false. We're looking for something false about blackmail in the Roman legal context. Okay, that's the answer we're picking, and we only have to consider 3 of them. Is this false? Blackmail combines 2 acts that are each legal separately. That is false. According to Roman law, the 2 separate acts aren't each legal. Specifically, that revelation act, the speech act of revealing harmful information, is presumptively illegal. Okay, so it's false. This is the right answer choice. B and D now are very similar answers. They are just merely descriptively true of blackmail, like without regard to where are you in Canada? Are you in America? Are you in ancient Rome? It doesn't matter, right? Because no matter what happens, blackmail just is a transaction with a triangular structure. You got to have the blackmailer, you got to have the victim, and the blackmail's got to leverage someone else's power. Otherwise, it's not called blackmail. Same thing here. The victim is paying to avoid being harmed by someone else other than the blackmailer, right? So you might, like, the confusing thing is, like, they don't say anything in this passage about, oh, is blackmail transaction with triangular structure? Are you paying to someone else to blah, blah. But see, the thing is, the standard, the criteria, which again goes back to why I think question 17 is kind of hard. The criteria is that using the information in the passage, you have to be able to support that it's false. Okay, and we can do that with A, right? Very clearly, because one of the acts is not legal. So this is a false statement according to this right here. You can't with B and D, right? Rather, what's happening with B and D, they're just merely describing things about blackmail that almost certainly is true in Rome because, like I said, it just is. Like, in the future, whenever we colonize Mars, I'm sure blackmail is going to happen on Mars. Okay, and when it happens on Mars, this is going to be true and this is going to be true because that's just what blackmail is. Returning now to question 18, again, we have to read the question stem again. Based on what can be inferred from the passage, which one of the following acts would have been illegal under Roman law? And we're going to stop reading because we already dealt with the rest of this question stem in the first round. So yeah, what would have been illegal under Roman law? Well, a bunch of things that would have been illegal, namely revealing information where there's harm. That's just presumptively illegal. Now, the only way that could possibly be privileged, in other words, legal, is if you meet this exception. That it was true, that it was made for a legitimate purpose, and it dealt with a matter that the public authorities had an interest in being revealed. So, if it's harmful to that person, that could still be legal if you meet this standard, if you meet this exception or carve out. Okay, otherwise it's illegal. And we're looking for the thing that's illegal. So now, between these three answer choices, one of them isn't like the other two. Okay, and that's answer choice E. E is not like the other two because these other two, you can make a case that they fall into the carve out, right? Because this one says revealing to public authorities that high-ranking military officer had embezzled funds for the military's budget. Okay, yeah. There's a decent case to be made here that this is something that the public authorities would have an interest in being revealed. Same with this, informing the tax agency that the employer had concealed their true income. The government has an interest, presumably, in this, right? It's their revenues, just like how this is about their revenues. Okay, so B and D, you're not so sure that they are illegal because they possibly fit into this carve-out, in which case they would be privileged, in spite of the fact that surely it would do harm. Surely it would do the military general harm, okay, which presumably is not legal. But hey, you fall into the carve-out, you fall into the exception. Right, so that's why B and D don't work, whereas E doesn't have that. E just says you're revealing to the public that a prominent politician once had an adulterous affair. Where's the legitimate purpose in that? Where's the public authorities have an interest in this being revealed? Do you see, this one is just more plainly doing harm to the person's reputation or status. Okay, so therefore, under Roman law, that would just be prima facie illegal. So E is the right answer. Now that we read passage B, we can do question 19, this analogy question. We're asked to analogize the way in which Canadian U.S. common law treats blackmail and Roman classical law treats blackmail. How are they analogized? Now, I think if you just dove into the answer choices without taking a moment and situating yourself, so to speak, I think you probably had this experience of just being like, what the hell, nothing's right. Now, if that happened, I hope you just circled it and moved on because that would have been a really good call. 19 is super hard. Okay, it really is. The LSAT writers kind of outdid themselves with a subtlety of the analogy here. And even if somehow you did like pick answer choice D, just decide all the rest were crap and you're like, okay, it's D, I'm going to guess you don't actually know why D is right. I'm going to guess that maybe you even tried really hard to draw the analogy back and you're still having a hard time doing it because it is really just that hard. Okay, so let's situate ourselves. How does the U.S. and Canadian common law, how does it treat blackmail? Well, the author spent a lot of time telling us that, look, it just doesn't make sense. It's a paradox, right? You have one act asking for money paired with another act, which is speech that could potentially harm, right? And it's the intersection of these two acts that we're calling blackmail and we're outlawing, which, by the way, it's weird because asking for money is totally fine and speech that harms is totally fine. So why the hell is it that when the two intersect, that's not okay? Well, whatever it is, that's just why it's not okay. Okay, because that's blackmail, so it's not okay. Right, so now over here for passage B in Roman times, you don't have that situation. You avoid this paradox. Why? Because look at how they treat speech that harms. Speech that harms is just illegal. The whole thing is illegal. Which is totally different from here. Here, speech that harms is legal, but if it intersects with asking for money at the same time, then that's illegal. In Roman times, no, you don't get to make speech. I don't care if you're asking for money, if you're asking for a hug, if you want to give money, none of that matters. Speech that harms is presumptively unlawful. So you see how they avoid that situation? Because how can you try to commit blackmail without threatening to make speech that harms? Right? Of course, you have to do that. So already it's illegal. Now, potentially you can get out of this, right? There's maybe a little pocket of legality carved out, right? That's the carve out over here where you have the, if you meet the exception. If you understand it like this, now I think you have a chance of seeing why D is right. Okay, because that's the structure D is actually going after. One country, that's America, makes it not legal for felons to own guns. Okay, felons to own guns. What's illegal? The illegality in America is the intersection of being a felon and owning a gun. Okay, so it's like if you're not a felon, you're just a gun enthusiast, shall we say, a law-abiding gun enthusiast. That's fine. You can own guns. But here, if you're the intersection, that's illegal, right? Felons and owning guns, no good. That's banned. Now, how would you carry that analogy through to Roman times? Well, let's see. Another country, ancient Rome, classical Rome, had no such ban because it makes gun ownership illegal for everyone. I don't care if you're a felon. This thing here, owning guns, is just illegal for everyone. Okay, it's just illegal for everyone. Except maybe there's a carve out. Police and military. Maybe there's a little bit of carve out for police and military. Now do you see how it actually parallels super well, even though it's really, really hard to see? Okay, so I definitely 100% did not have this understanding when I picked answer choice D. Okay, it was just like, these others don't work. I don't even know why D works, but D is like the least worst. But now, having had time to review this, it's like, oh, actually, D is not just least. D is really great. It's really great. I just had a not good enough of understanding of the passage in order to realize why D is really great. Okay, but that circles back on something I say a lot, which is you don't actually need a perfect understanding to get the correct answer choice, because the correct answer choice is 1 out of the 5, right? So sort of approximately getting it right is good enough. In fact, at times it might even be better because it's more efficient. Now, of course, that's no excuse for you not to do your blind review properly. Obviously, on blind review, that's when you just spend the time and get better at this, right? Truly understand analogies better. And D will help you understand analogies better. Okay, so now let's look at the others. One country legally requires anyone working as a carpenter to be licensed and insured. Another has no such requirement. I just can't even imagine what this, being a carpenter is what? Being blackmail? So one country wants to regulate blackmailing. Another country is laissez-faire about blackmailing. Just go blackmail all you want. Why are you bothering me with this nonsense? Another country's like, oh no, I set up a American Blackmail Association. You got to go register with them first before you can start going around blackmailing people, right? A is nuts. B says one country makes it illegal to use cell phones on trains. Another makes it illegal to use cell phones on both trains and buses. Right? So if you try to draw the parallel here, it's like, okay, so trains, right? These are the trains, okay, illegal. And buses, illegal. That's one country. It's not about the intersection. It's not like if you're on a train bus, whatever the hell that is, right? If you're on a train bus, that's illegal. No, it's illegal on trains, illegal on buses. That's for one country. The other country, was it just one of them, right? Just the trains. Okay, just the trains is illegal. Okay, what do you say? That's not the relationship. Which one is America? Which one is Rome? I don't know, right? Doesn't make sense. One country legally allows many income tax deduction exemptions. Another country legally allows relatively few deduction exemptions. Again, what relationship is this? This is a quantitative relationship. Whatever you're talking about, one country allows lots of it, another country allows less of it. That's not the relationship. Which country allows a lot of blackmail? Which country allows less blackmail? Like neither country seems to be that fond of blackmail. And finally, E says one country makes it illegal to drive motorcycles with racing grade engines on its roads. Another country legally permits such motorcycles, but fines riders who commit traffic violations higher amounts than it does other motorists. Okay, so maybe we can say this one country is America, and what's illegal is the intersection. Maybe this is the money bit, and this is the speech that harms bit. Right? It's again, you have the intersection that's not legal, right? Where this is the motorcycles, this is that special engine, right? The two together is not legal. But then the other country has to categorically ban either motorcycles or racing grade engines. And that's not it. The other country permits such motorcycles, actually just referring to the intersection. For the other country, the motorcycles with engines, this is okay. It's not banned. It's okay. So you see, it's not like the structure is not like it.